Have you ever asked yourself this in the silence after an achievement? When the lights go out, the notifications stop, and there's nothing left to chase for the day. Why do you still feel that hollow space inside? You've done what they told you to. You've worked hard. You've improved. You've achieved things others would admire. And yet, the emptiness remains. Quiet, persistent, almost embarrassing. It's not easy to admit, especially in a culture that rewards image and progress. There's a pressure to always appear fulfilled, to post gratitude, to smile and say, "I'm doing great." But something inside you knows the truth. There's a longing that success didn't touch, a hunger for something you can't quite name. What if the problem isn't you? What if it's the story you were given? The story that told you success equals wholeness, that if you reach certain goals, you'll finally feel enough. That inner peace is a side effect of outer accomplishment. But here you are, accomplished perhaps, or at least not entirely lost. And still the question echoes, why do I feel like this? This is not a sign of failure. It's not a flaw to fix. It's a clue, a signal, the beginning of a deeper path. Because that ache you feel, it might not be a problem to solve. It might be a truth trying to surface. Philosopher Viktor Frankl once said that despair is suffering without meaning. Could it be that your inner emptiness isn't about lacking success, but lacking direction toward what is truly meaningful? In today's episode, we're going to sit with this question, not to get rid of it, but to let it guide us. Because sometimes the most important questions are not the ones we rush to answer, but the ones we dare to feel. And before we continue, let me ask, have you ever felt this kind of emptiness even after achieving something? Share your experience in the comments. This channel is a space for honest reflection, not perfection. If this resonates with you, like this video and subscribe for conversations that don't offer quick fixes, but invite deep transformation. From a young age, we're sold a promise, subtle, persistent, and nearly universal, that success will save us. It may not be said so directly, but the message is everywhere. Study hard so you can get a good job. Get a good job so you can earn well. Earn well so you can buy freedom, respect, admiration. Then finally, peace, fulfillment, belonging. But what happens when we climb the ladder, only to find it was leaning against the wrong wall? Many people arrive at their so-called dream life and discover that what they worked for doesn't quiet the ache inside. The career, the house, the recognition, they offer comfort, but not meaning. Stimulation, but not peace. Applause, but not intimacy. This isn't a judgment on ambition. It's a call to examine the why behind it. Because when success becomes a substitute for self-worth, it becomes a trap. Philosopher Julian Marias warned that modern society tends to confuse what is instrumental with what is ultimate. Success is instrumental. It is a tool, not an end. When treated as salvation, it collapses under the weight of our expectations. And yet, the system keeps feeding this myth. Social media glorifies the visible fruits of achievement while hiding the inner desert. We scroll through curated lives and think, they must feel whole. We compare our insides to others' outsides and conclude that we're the broken ones. But what if the myth is the problem, not you? Success in itself is neutral. It can be noble when it flows from vocation, from love, from a desire to serve. But when it becomes your identity, it slowly erodes the very parts of you that long for depth and truth. The emptiness you feel might not mean you've failed. It might mean you've been chasing something that was never meant to fulfill you. So let this part be a gentle challenge. Revisit your definition of success. Where did it come from? Who told you it would be enough? And what if they were wrong? There's no shame in waking up from a story that no longer serves your soul. On the contrary, it's the first sign of awakening. Keep reflecting. And remember, not all that glitters is guidance. You wake up with notifications waiting, meetings scheduled, messages unread, tasks lined up like soldiers in your digital planner. The world sees momentum, accomplishment, a life in motion. But you, when you pause long enough to listen, feel strangely detached. It's as if you're living your life from outside yourself, watching a well-scripted version unfold while something essential stays untouched within. This is the paradox of the modern soul. Externally vibrant, internally vacant. There's no shortage of noise. We're surrounded by content, connections, conversations. But somewhere along the way, quantity replaced quality. Our days are packed, yet rarely lived. We're connected to hundreds, yet known by few. We're praised for doing, yet slowly forget how to simply be. Psychiatry sees this in the clinic daily. Patients who, on paper, have every reason to feel satisfied. Stable careers, families, health, opportunities. But inside, they whisper a terrifying truth. I feel like I'm disappearing. It's not depression in the clinical sense. It's a quiet erosion of self, a soul out of sync with the life it's living. Fyodor Dostoevsky captured this tension masterfully. In Notes from Underground, his narrator rages against a world obsessed with progress but blind to the needs of the human heart. He speaks from the margins, exposing the absurdity of a life built only on rational success and social status. A life full of systems but starved of meaning. And this is the danger of a life that only looks full. You learn to play your role. You learn what to say, how to present yourself, how to meet expectations. But somewhere along the line, you lose the thread of your own story. You confuse motion with direction, busyness with purpose. The result? You feel like a guest in your own existence. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you felt fully present, undistracted, unperforming, unedited? When did you last speak or act from the center of who you are, not from the image you've crafted? This isn't about abandoning your life. It's about reclaiming it. Recognizing that your schedule may be full, but your soul might still be starving. So pause, not to escape, but to notice. To ask not just what am I doing, but who am I becoming? Because fullness on the outside means nothing if you're vanishing within. We live in a world where value is measured by output. From childhood, we're rewarded for performance, grades, trophies, likes, productivity. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, we internalize a message. You are what you produce. This is the engine of the performance culture. It pushes us to prove our worth, not discover it. We strive to be impressive rather than authentic, useful rather than whole. And in the process, something within us begins to fade, the quiet, unmeasured self. The philosopher Joseph Pieper warned against this decades ago. In his work, Leisure, the Basis of Culture, he wrote that a society addicted to constant activity loses its capacity for contemplation, for being rooted in what is, not just what gets done. When everything becomes a means to an end, even the human soul gets instrumentalized. This is not merely a philosophical concern. Clinically, the effects are real. Burnout is no longer a condition of overworked executives. It's become the atmosphere many people breathe. We live in a constant low-grade exhaustion, not just from doing too much, but from doing too much of what doesn't align with who we are. When life becomes a stage, the self becomes a performance. You begin to edit your words, censor your emotions, present a polished version of yourself. But deep down you wonder, if I stop performing, will anyone still love me? And so we keep going. We hustle. We optimize. We chase goals without asking if they're ours. The tragedy isn't that we fail, it's that we succeed at things that don't matter. This pressure doesn't just alienate us from others, it alienates us from ourselves. We forget how to listen inwardly. We become strangers to our own desires, to our deeper questions, to the small voice that doesn't shout but always tells the truth. But here's the invitation: to pause the performance, to risk being instead of impressing, to make space for the self you've ignored under layers of duty and expectation. Ask yourself, am I living a life I've chosen, or one I've performed into existence? The culture won't reward you for stepping back, but your soul might. And in that quiet space, you may remember something essential. You were not made to perform. You were made to become. What if the emptiness you feel is not a defect to fix, but a doorway to walk through? In a world addicted to noise and answers, silence is unsettling. Emptiness feels like failure. We interpret that inner void as a lack of something we must quickly fill. More achievement, more stimulation, more self-improvement. But what if the void isn't asking to be filled? What if it's asking to be heard? The tradition of classical philosophy, especially in the thought of St. Thomas Aquinas, teaches us that the human being is not satisfied by any finite good. We're structured for transcendence. That means even when we have everything the world calls enough, our heart may still ache, not because something is wrong, but because something deeper is rightfully awakening. Viktor Frankl echoes this in his logotherapy. He noticed that many of his patients weren't clinically ill but spiritually disoriented. He called this the existential vacuum, a subtle but profound inner void that emerges when a person loses touch with meaning. Not with success, with meaning. In this view, your emptiness is not simply emotional. It is existential. And that changes everything. Because then, it's not a failure to medicate or escape. It's a message to interpret. It's your soul saying, what you've built is impressive, but it's not home. This is why the most dangerous response to emptiness is distraction. The more you numb it, the louder it becomes. The more you avoid it, the more it shows up in disguised forms. Anxiety, fatigue, indifference, sudden despair. It doesn't go away, because it's not there to harm you. It's there to lead you. The question is, will you listen? This emptiness may be inviting you to reorient your life, not to start over externally, but to ask deeper questions internally. What am I really seeking? What matters most? Who am I when I stop chasing applause? The call is quiet. It won't shout over the noise of your calendar or your scrolling. But if you dare to stop, just for a moment, you might hear it. And when you do, you'll realize the emptiness was never your enemy. It was your invitation, your soul asking you to come home. There's a particular kind of sorrow that often goes unnamed. It's not dramatic. It doesn't look like collapse. It looks like quiet detachment from your own life. You wake up, follow your routine, perform your roles. But deep down, you feel like an actor reading lines someone else wrote. This is the pain of not belonging to yourself. Many people feel this, especially those who have followed the script of success without questioning who wrote it. Maybe you chose your profession to make someone proud. Maybe you entered a relationship to meet expectations. Maybe you built a life that looked admirable, while slowly drifting from what once made you feel alive. And now, you're here. Outwardly, fine, inwardly fragmented. This feeling of being misaligned with your own existence is more common than you think. Dostoevsky hinted at it in The Idiot, through characters who have everything and yet feel like strangers in the world. It's not that they lack opportunities, it's that they no longer recognize their reflection in the life they've created. In clinical terms, this is often described as a loss of agency or identity diffusion. You don't necessarily feel depressed, you just don't feel you. And that's a deeper ache. Because when you don't belong to yourself, even the good things lose their flavor. But here's the truth, this disconnection is not permanent, it's not a life sentence, it's a signpost. The pain you feel is sacred. It's telling you that somewhere you've handed over authorship of your life, maybe little by little. A compromise here, a silence there. But the result is the same. You look around and think, how did I end up here? The good news? You're not trapped, and you're not alone. This pain can become the beginning of a return to your values, your voice, your sense of inner authority. But it requires a brave step, to admit that success built on disconnection is not worth preserving. Ask yourself, what parts of my life reflect who I truly am? And what parts feel like costumes I never chose? To belong to yourself again, you may have to let go of versions of you that were built only to be approved. But what you gain in return is priceless. A life that feels like yours, even if no one claps. We live surrounded by noise, not just external, but internal. Opinions, anxieties, expectations. Notifications buzz, thoughts race, and we keep moving, always moving, afraid of what might catch up if we stopped. Silence has become suspect. Stillness, intolerable. But what if the very thing you're avoiding is the thing that could heal you? This is not a romantic idea. It's an ancient one. Across spiritual traditions and philosophical schools, silence has always been seen not as absence, but as presence. Not as emptiness, but as the fertile ground where truth can emerge. St. Thomas Aquinas described contemplation as the highest human act, not because it's passive, but because it opens us to the deepest reality. But today, when you feel empty, the first instinct is to do. Fix it. Fill it. Escape it. The inner void feels threatening because we fear what it might reveal. But what if the emptiness isn't chaos? It's clarity waiting to be heard. In therapy, one of the most profound moments is when someone finally sits still with what they've spent years running from. They stop talking. They stop explaining. And in the silence, something emerges. Grief, desire, fear, longing. Not to be solved, but to be seen. That's where transformation begins. The writer Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Why? Because silence removes the masks. It confronts us with our real questions, unedited and unscripted. And sometimes that's terrifying. But here's the paradox. The silence you fear is where your answers wait. Not the answers you expect, but the ones you need. In the quiet, you begin to hear your life speak back to you. You begin to remember who you are beyond roles, beyond performance, beyond striving. So make space. Not just physical space, but inner space. Create moments where you're not consuming, not producing, not distracting. Moments where your soul can surface without fear of being ignored again. Ask yourself, what am I afraid to hear in the silence, and what might happen if I finally listened? You don't need more noise. You need courage. The courage to be still. To face the truth that doesn't scream, but whispers. And in that whisper, you may find not just relief, but direction. A way forward. A path home. If success doesn't satisfy and distraction only deepens the ache, what then can actually fill the emptiness? This is not a question of comfort. It's a question of essence. What do we truly need? Not to feel entertained or distracted, but to feel alive. Three things consistently emerge from both philosophical tradition and clinical observation: truth, relationship, and meaning. Not as abstract ideals, but as concrete experiences that root us, awaken us, and restore us to ourselves. Let's start with truth. Not simply factual accuracy, but interior honesty. Living in alignment with what you know, deep down, to be real. When your outer life contradicts your inner convictions, the soul fragments. You may succeed in the world's eyes, but internally, a quiet war begins. Healing starts when you tell yourself the truth about what matters, what hurts, what you're avoiding. Then, relationship. Not just being surrounded by people, but being known. Intimacy is not quantity, it's depth. In a world of followers and likes, what we truly crave is to be seen without performance and still loved. The philosopher Martin Buber spoke of the I-thou relationship, where the other is not a means but a presence, encountered, not used. These are the moments that anchor us. Without them, even the best achievements feel strangely hollow. And finally, meaning. This is the soil in which truth and relationship flourish. Viktor Frankl said that humans are not driven by pleasure or power, but by meaning. We want to live for something. We want our suffering to have purpose, our joy to have direction. And meaning, paradoxically, often emerges not when we seek it directly, but when we give ourselves away to a cause, a person, a faith, a calling. These three, truth, relationship, meaning, are not commodities. They can't be bought or scheduled, but they can be chosen. You choose truth by no longer lying to yourself. You choose relationship by risking vulnerability. You choose meaning by living for more than your own comfort. Ask yourself gently, where in my life am I living in truth? Where am I known and where do I hide? What larger purpose quietly calls to me beneath the noise? Because here's the promise. When you start to live from these places, the emptiness begins to change. Not all at once, not easily, but steadily. You stop searching for something more and begin becoming something real. When the foundation of your life starts to crack, not from catastrophe but from quiet misalignment, it's tempting to rearrange the furniture instead of rebuilding the house. A new goal, a new habit, a new version of the same performance. But if the emptiness you feel is real, it will not be resolved by superficial fixes. You need a different kind of renovation, one that begins from within. This is where many turn away, because rebuilding from the inside out requires more than effort. It demands courage. It means letting go of identities that brought you approval. It means saying no to paths that made you look successful, but left you feeling numb. It means asking, what matters to me? Deeply, truly, non-negotiably. In the thought of St. Thomas Aquinas, the human person is ordered toward the good, not just any good, but their proper good. That is, the form of life that corresponds to the deepest structure of their being. This isn't about chasing a feeling. It's about aligning with your design. When you live against your own nature, your soul resists, even if everyone else applauds. So how do you begin again? Start small. Ask different questions. Instead of, what should I be doing? Ask, what am I becoming? Instead of, how can I achieve more? Ask, what do I want to embody? These questions shift the axis of your life, from performance to integrity, from validation to vocation. Begin to discern your values, not the ones you inherited or performed, but the ones that resonate with your conscience. What do you want to stand for when no one's watching? What are you willing to sacrifice for, not because it's profitable, but because it's right? Then, look at your daily life, your habits, your time, your speech. Do they reflect the values you claim? If not, gently begin to align them, not perfectly, not all at once, but steadily, quietly, faithfully. This process is not glamorous. It won't trend, but it will set you free. Ask yourself, what would my life look like if it flowed from my deepest truth, not my loudest fear? Rebuilding from the inside out is not about reinventing yourself. It's about returning to yourself, the self you abandoned for acceptance, the self you forgot while chasing the world's applause. That self is still there, waiting, ready. What if the emptiness you feel isn't the end of the road, but the beginning of a deeper one? We're conditioned to treat emptiness as a failure, as if something broke inside you that needs urgent repair. But what if it's not brokenness, it's awakening? What if that ache isn't a flaw to fix, but a threshold to cross? The greatest transformations often begin with loss, not of possessions, but of illusions. When success no longer satisfies, when old answers fall silent, when the life you built feels foreign, that's when the deeper questions finally surface. Not because you failed, but because you're ready. In The Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky speaks of a longing so deep that only the infinite can satisfy it. That longing, that holy emptiness, is not weakness. It's your soul refusing to settle for substitutes. It's the sign that you were made for something more enduring than image, more truthful than applause, more real than performance. In clinical practice, the people who grow most profoundly aren't those who never fall, but those who dare to face their emptiness without fleeing. They listen, they wait, they descend into the silence. And there, they find not just themselves, but something greater. The capacity to live from meaning, to relate with authenticity, to suffer with purpose, and to love without masks. The fullness you seek is not out there. It begins in the quiet yes to what is real, to what endures, to what asks something of you in return. So now the question is no longer, how do I get rid of this emptiness? The question is, what is it trying to lead me toward? Let this be the moment you stop fighting the void and start listening to it. Let it strip away what no longer serves. Let it refine your desires. Let it burn off the lies that kept you busy and far from home. The emptiness is not the enemy, it is the door. And on the other side of that door is not a perfect life, but a true one. A life where your inner world is no longer neglected, where meaning is not a luxury but your compass, and where success is redefined, not by applause, but by coherence with your soul. If this journey speaks to you, share your reflection in the comments. Like this video, subscribe, and join this community of seekers learning to live from truth, not illusion. You're not alone, and your emptiness was never the end. It was the invitation.